Hello, everybody. Welcome to CIS238, and this is Bob. We all know each other, right? Well, this is me again. So, how are you doing? Anyway, this is the 9th of September, 2020. So, welcome to class. Now, what we're going to do this week is we're going to turn the page a little bit and talk about imaging discs and getting the information off of those discs. We're going to be doing a little bit more than that, and this is kind of like a part one of two, or maybe even a part one of three. So let me explain. So what we need to do now is we need to be able to grab a disk from a computer hard drive, right? Well, that would be the disk, and make copies of it and be able to read and analyze the copies for forensic analysis. Now, that only took me about, 15 seconds to say. However, the details in doing so are much more complicated than that, and maybe not hard, but involve a bunch of steps, and that's what we're going to be covering over the next several sessions. So what we're going to do in this course is, or in this week, if you would, is I want you to kind of go over three things, or I want you to learn, or us learn together, three things. Number one, I want you to learn the difference between cloning a disk and imaging a disk. Now, they're different, and we're going to go over in your viewing, we're going to go over the differences between cloning a disk, say that 10 times fast after a martini for dinner, right? And imaging a disk. Then what I want to do is I want to give you an introduction to reading image disks. Scenario, you have a computer hard drive that is found on a laptop computer, and you need to make an image of the disk. And not only that, is you need to determine what is on it. Now, if you're working in computer forensics, rarely is it as easy as just plugging the disk in and reading it and go, oh my gosh, look, I just opened this up and this is a Word file that details the crime. It's not that easy. As a matter of fact, as you've learned in prior weeks, looking at these files on a file system can be complex, and usually is, and would require much work on your part to determine the contents of these files. And that's where I want you to at least get the basics of learning how to read an image disk. So that's going to be the second viewing that I have for you. And I don't want you to really look too much into it, except just watch it. It's what I call a good popcorn video. You don't necessarily need to take a lot of notes. Just let it sink in, absorb it. Don't worry about exactly the steps in doing so and actually repeating them. So it's not really a cookbook video where, it's like a monkey see, monkey do one. I just want you just to watch and kind of get the terminology. Like, for example, you learned a little bit about hexadecimal. That's going to serve you well later on in your career in computer forensics, because just about everything that you're going to be doing is going to be, reading hexadecimal or converting hexadecimal to something human readable. So that's the second objective I had for you this week, is to get at least familiar with the process of looking to see at what an imaged disk is and how you can, or the steps that can be used to read it. Now, don't think that reading an image disk is like I could write steps like on how to go to Joule. It requires a lot of creative thinking, and it requires a lot of analysis on your part, or what we call critical thinking. So I want you to at least start thinking along those lines of, when you get an image disk, it's not like you open it up and you read it and you see what the bad guy was doing. It's not that easy. As a matter of fact, some of these files can be damaged. Like, for example, if a laptop was left in the rain, or perhaps there's been a desktop computer that's been in the basement for 10 years and now there's mold on it. So not always can you take a disk and image it, or an image disk and actually read it. So I want you to start thinking along those lines. Now, the third objective I have for you this week, or for us this week, is I want to introduce to you some tools that we're going to be using or that are available for you to use. Now, I kind of like this because we're going to be, there's more about this later on the tools that we're going to be using, but we get to start looking at the different tools that we can use to A, read image disks, B, to analyze websites, C, to analyze browsing history. So we're going to start using tools not from a user level, not from, it's like, for example, to look at browsing history. It's not like, oh, look, I was able to go and Google Chrome and look at your browsing history. Well, guess what? I mean, people are smarter than that. So there's tools that you can use to actually look at IP traffic, look at trace routing, look at packet routing, and determine exactly which websites were accessed and maybe the information that was received from them. So anyway, these are just some tools that we could be using. We're also going to be looking at tools, again, to look at image disks, to look at browsing history, to look at cookies, to look at really anything under the sun, and also look at different file systems. For example, we're going to look at, just starting today, we're going to look at Windows file systems and a little bit of history on the current Windows file systems as opposed to other ones. We're not going to be going over Linux too much, although it's going to be covered in some of our viewing. And hopefully next week, if we get a lot of this done, is we're going to be going over some other file systems, specifically like flash file systems, such as you would find on an iPhone or an Android device, where you don't necessarily have a hard drive, but you have what's called like a flash drive or like a flash system where it's basically, static memory rather than just a hard drive where this information is kept. So these are the things that we are going to be learning about this week. Now, I've posted assignment 3. And again, you know how to get to it, right? You go to the syllabus, you go to the last page of the syllabus, you click on the link. But you already know that because you're listening to this video. Remember I said I was going to mention some things 1,000 times? Well, I'm going to probably stop mentioning that because as of this point, you all got it. But anyway, as of this date right now, I don't have the actual due in there. And you'll see that. You'll see it'll be posted a little bit later. But I do have your reading. Again, you probably already know that because you clicked on this link here. So please continue with your viewing with those 3 objectives in mind. And this is what I call a soak week, which means that there's nothing due as far as deliverables go, but we need to do a couple things. We need to get the information and start looking at the material and doing all of our studying so we can start doing all these good things I've been saying. And also, this is a little bit of a departure from the first couple weeks, which a lot of you are still kind of catching up with. So if you're still working on, again, from the current date, I hate to put dates in these videos here because I don't really know when you're watching it, but a lot of you are still finishing up an assignment 2. So this is probably a good week to do that, to kind of catch up on assignment 2. There's nothing due at the end of this week. The next assignment is due on September 27th, which is plenty of time from now. So you can spend this week kind of catching up a little bit. Again, get assignment 2 into me. About half of you have not yet. And then just continue with your viewing and then keep looking at our assignment 3. And sometime early next week, I'll post the assignment that's going to be due on the 27th. But it's going to be along the lines of looking at an image disk and determining the contents of an image disk. And also, what I think I'm going to add is I'm going to add an assignment on forensic viewing of file browser history. Where we can take a look at a file browser even after it's been scrubbed and determine exactly when a browser was accessed, what was searched for, the websites that have to do with the search, and whatever content was returned. So that's what the assignment is going to be along the lines of. So you could start at least preparing for that. So anyway, that's all I had for you insofar as my lecture in introduction to the class. So from now and at this point, you could go and do your viewing for the rest of the week. And thank you for making it this far. And I bid you all a very well rest of the day. Thank you.